my Insta family, my Insta Flex 5 family. I wanted to give you a summary of my discussion at the metabolic health versus weight management, if you will, and how they are necessarily different, though related, at the longevity show yesterday. So I had a great time with another physician, Dr. Tony Gladstone, here of the NHS in UK. And some of the bottom lines, why we differentiate metabolic health from weight loss or weight management, if you will. We know, for instance, that there's a BMI approach, a height-weight scale, if you will, a approach that's cookie cutter and does not look at indications of metabolic health, which I summarized as 3 goals. Insulin sensitivity, since we're talking about weight management, I'll put that first, though I usually discuss blood pressure, but let's put that in as number 2 for the context of this. And then, of course, excellent lipids, all driven by a lifestyle that does the maximum work, and then, where necessary, medications to fill in the gaps. If you try to do it in the reverse, where medications are just filling in the gap or driving all of it, you will not get the downstream effects that the holistic lifestyle, in particular Flex 5 lifestyle, in my opinion, which is widest scalability for the masses, would achieve. So other discussions were around, environment. Well, we can't modify the environment around us. I mean, we've got Starbucks everywhere, we got whatever. I mean, it's like everywhere there's going to be corporate food, of which most of it is going to be, or a significant fraction, I'll say most at this point, because I'd like to really do the detail analysis, not on just ultra processed, but on truly CRRAHP foods, or calorie-rich, refined, and hyperpalatable foods. They're so overwhelming, and as a collective mouth in the world, we are ingesting, because you see it selling, it's off the shelves. I mean, there's no question how much we're doing. We're overdoing it. Dose makes the poison, but we're really in, if you will, I don't like to use this kind of extreme language, but poisoning levels, because by definition we have massive levels of hypertension, insulin resistance, with 100 million now people with prediabetes, advanced insulin resistance in the United States, obviously tens of millions with type 2, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to modify our home environment. And I wanted to emphasize simple things, that the occasional crap food, calorie-rich, refined, and hyperpalatable, CRRAHP, won't mention that again, is not an issue. I mean, in fact, if you have metabolic reserve from a lifestyle that is honed in on whatever and as much as you can do in the 5 domains, okay, they are psychology and mindset, positive psychology, obviously understanding the mindset of somebody that can accommodate slips without thinking that they're a crisis, they're actually an opportunity. The food part, which I believe is best for most in the plant-predominant world, but I have all kinds of open-mindedness to kickstart processes, whether it's meal replacements, whether it's keto, whatever the case may be, to get those 3 biomarkers in place where you are both healthy and happy. Okay, that ultimately has to be the overlap. And then, of course, physical activity, a lot of it from the non-exercise activity realm. I've been walking around enjoying downtown London here. And then, of course, we have environments, for which I'm going to start walking and talking, because I can sense people smoking near me, and I simply don't like it. I'm not worried about a touch of secondhand smoke going to kill me, but it just doesn't feel that great. And then, of course, there's environments. Physical environments that are also part of it. So there you go. That's physical environments and accountability. And I'm accountable to you. That being said, the home environment is key. The wolf versus the dog. We cannot compare a truly more, I would say, linked to our historical pattern of eating as hunter-gatherers, which is more nutrient-dense, less calorie-dense. I'm not going to worry about the specifics of how fruit was grown and harvested 5,000 years ago versus now and all that. The bottom line is we have easily the opportunity to increase the nutrient density and decrease the calories per bite, or calorie density, of our foods. And that is going to be under our control, mostly at home. Now, can you manage work and work environment? Sure, it's called a food bag. And you can even run on errands and grab a piece of fruit or some snacks that can come with you, and not in a complicated fashion, right? We can just throw some, excuse my language, throw some healthy shit in a bag, to be contrasted with crap. It's not that complicated. It's actually very simple. Now, it's not as easy as it is simple, and I want to differentiate the two. Simple and easy, you can differentiate if a friend is stuck under a car. If a friend is stuck under a car, it is not particularly complicated. You have to find several strong people fast and lift the frickin' car. That is not complicated. You don't need a PhD. You don't need expertise in physics to do it. You just need to do it and find them fast, but that's not easy. So we can differentiate the two. That being said, we do have to accept that we have to find health and happiness meeting together. And all of this approach must ultimately be driven by your why and your, what I would call 5% fun zone, or non-negotiables, things that you find define you and the points that you'll enjoy, just like the double Michelin star restaurant meal I had last night. I'm going to do that maybe never again, but the point was I really enjoyed that moment. In fact, I would say there was some even features of portion control involved in that experience. Expensive experience, by the way. Talk about 5% fun zone not all being about food. It can also be about money, if you will. That being said, let's kind of bring it down to what was the topic of the talk and how we can differentiate weight loss in terms of metabolic health. For instance, we know that if you lose 5% to 7% of your body weight as someone with prediabetes, you'll reduce your subsequent risk over several years of developing type 2 diabetes by 50 to 60%. Those in the diabetes prevention program, this is randomized controlled trial proven, I'm not just guessing it, 3,000 people plus in a placebo-controlled study of metformin versus placebo versus lifestyle. Those that lost over 10% within the first 6 months, or 10% or more, I guess I should say to be accurate, which isn't that dramatic if you just do the math, reduced their subsequent risk of type 2 diabetes by 85%, okay? Not 18.5, 85%. Speaking of 8, I'm going to try to keep this down to 8 minutes and wind it up here. So when it comes down to weight loss, for instance, I would rather judge somebody's goal, if they're going to ask my expertise, based on insulin sensitivity. Check a fasting insulin, check if it's less than 5 or it's 5 or less, somewhere deep in the single digits for sure. With a fasting glucose that's well hydrated, not one of those dry to the bone. When we say fasting, we don't mean water fasting, okay? Fasting for God versus fasting for people who think they're God. That's not me, by the way. We want a well-hydrated fasting glucose less than 100 with an A1C of less than 5.5%. If you've got that fasting insulin of 5 or less, a fasting glucose of less than 100 milligram per deciliter, and you have an A1C of less than 5.5%, I don't really have a strong argument in terms of insulin sensitivity for you to lose more weight. In fact, you could risk losing muscle and bone, worshiping at the altar of a height-weight scale. And then, of course, blood pressure we discussed many times on here. Less than 120/80 is the ideal if naturally controlled. Check multiple times over the month, and we've discussed that many times. And then an ApoB, the most accurate measure for lipid, is ApoB, ApoB, less than 60 if you're talking about someone at high risk or is just really adamant about not developing coronary artery disease. And there you go. We're going to wrap it up at 8 minutes. I'm going to give you a big hug from London. Can't wait to see you next time. Don't forget to check out myflex5.com.